Hi everyone. So today we will be solving an important SQL interview question that has been asked in EY. So the problem involves calculating the average monthly revenue for each sector using financial transaction data. So let's break down the problem statement over here. So we have two tables. The first one is the transactions table that contains records for various financial transactions made by different companies. So this table has columns say transaction ID, which is a unique identifier for each transaction, company ID, which is again an identifier linking the transaction for a specific company. Transaction date is the date when the transaction occurred, and revenue is nothing but the revenue generated by the company in that particular transaction. Now, the second table is the sectors table. So, the sectors table maps each company to its respective sector. So, it has two columns, company ID and sector. So, company ID is the unique identifier for each company, which corresponds to the company ID in the transactions table. And the sector is the sector to which the company belongs. Now your goal is to write a SQL query that calculates the average monthly revenue for each sector in the year 2020. And your output should show the average revenue for each sector for every month, allowing the company to see how each sector performed financially month by month. So your output should have columns like month, sector, and the average revenue for that particular month and sector. So let's take a look at the input table and the output table over here. So these two tables are your input tables, the transactions table and the sectors table. And this is your output table, which have columns like month, sector, and the average revenue for that particular month and sector combination. So let's see how this output has come up from these input tables. So if you see for the transaction date, we can see that there are 2 months, the January month, January 2020 and February 2020. So let's calculate the average revenue for the January month for the technology sector. So if you see for the company ID 1 here, so the company ID actually belongs to the technology sector. So there are only two transactions made in the January month. So January 2020 with the company ID 1 and company ID 2. So for the company ID 1 has a revenue of 5,000 in January, and since there is only one transaction for the sector in January, so the average revenue for the technology sector is 5,000 as you can see in the output. So the month one denotes that it from the January month with the sector technology, and the average revenue is 5,000. Now, if you see for the company ID 2, so the company ID 2 belongs to the healthcare sector. So if for the healthcare sector, here the company 2 has a revenue of 8,500 in January. So similarly, with just only one transaction for healthcare, so the average revenue has come up to be 8,500 here, since we are only referring to the January month. Now, if you see for the February month, so these are the three transactions that belongs to the February month. So if you see for the technology sector, so this for the company ID 1 has a revenue of 4,500 and the company ID 3 has a revenue of 9,900, and both the company ID 1 and 3 belongs to the technology sector. So to find the average revenue for the technology sector, we just sum up these two revenues, which is the 4,500 and 9,900. So the total will come out to be around 1,400, and then we'll just divide it by 2 to calculate the average revenue. So the average revenue will come out to be 7,450. So as you can see, for the February month with the technology sector, our average revenue has come out to be 7,450. Now the last one is the only the with the company ID 2, which belongs to the healthcare sector. So with the company 2 has a revenue of 7,500 in February. So the average revenue for healthcare is 7,500 here, as there is only one transaction. So I hope you understood the input table and the output tables over here. So let's now move on to the steps to solve this. You can also pause the video here and just think through, just brainstorm like what steps we can follow to just solve this problem and what kind of SQL functions that you will be using to solve this problem. So let's now move on to the steps part. So our first step would be to create a CTE to extract month and filter by year. So in this very step, we will just create a common table expression to extract the month from the transactions date and filter only the transactions that occur in the year 2020. So in this CTE, we can also calculate the average revenue for each company within the same month using the average function with the window function to compute the average monthly revenue for each company. So this is what we will be doing in the step 1. Now in the step 2, we will just join the CT that we just created in the step 1 with the sectors table. So after creating the CT with the filtered and grouped data, we will just join it with the sectors table using the company ID. So what this join will help us? So this join will help us ensure that each company's revenue data is matched with the corrected sector. Now in the step 3, we will just group the data by month and year. So after joining the tables in the step 2, we need to group the data by month and sector. So this is necessary to calculate the average revenue at the sector level for each month, since we want to calculate the average revenue for the combination of sector and month. So in this step, we will just perform the group by function. And in the last step, we will just order the results. So since we need to order the results first by month and then by sector, so this will just ensure that our output is in the chronological order for each month and the sectors are listed over there. So that's how we are just going to approach our solution. So let's now move on to the implementation part. So we will be solving this question in MySQL workbench over here. So guys, as you can see, here is my input tables, the transactions table and the sectors table. And now from the steps that we just discussed, we are going to apply CT. But for now, let's first do it without CT, and then later on we will just discuss another approach using CT. So for now, we just want to join the tables on the company ID column, because the company ID is something which is common in both the tables. So let's first join the tables. So first of all, select, I'll just write star for now, since I want to retrieve all the records from transactions table, transaction as T, and the second I'm going to perform in a join, say sectors as S on company ID. So T dot company ID is equal to S dot company ID. So if I just run this query, you see that each company's revenue data is matched with the corrected sector. So whatever the columns that I want to retrieve here is, I'll just going to write that. So the company ID I want. Second, I want to extract the month from the transaction date. So I'll just do that. So I am going to apply extract function. So extract month from transaction date. So I will just give the alias as month. Okay. And so since in this case our goal was to calculate the average monthly revenue for each sector in the year 2020 for every month. So here I am going to apply the average function to compute the average revenue. So here in this case, let's just calculate the average of revenue. So revenue is from my transactions table. So T dot transactions, average of revenue is going to be average revenue. Now I will have to apply the group by clause. No, but before applying to the group by clause, I had one condition that my year has to be 2020. Although by default in the input table the year is already 2020, but compute the uh, corrected results, we will have to apply this condition. So where extract year should be, so year from transaction date. So the year has to be 2020, and then I can just directly apply my group by clause. So since I want to compute the average revenue for the combination of month and sector, that's why I'll be applying the group by clause on sector and month. But as you can see that we have not extracted our sector column here, so I'm just extracting that. So S dot sector. So this is my month. So I have applied group by sector, And since we don't want company ID now, we don't want company ID, we only wanted sector, month, and the average revenue in our output. So I'm just writing that here. So if I just do that, okay, so it shows comma. It has to be comma now. So if I just do this, what we will be getting is our final output. So as you can see that here we have just presented our output to compute the average revenue for the combination of sector and month. Now in this case what we did is, first of all we just joined both the tables. So in this step we just joined the transactions table and the sectors table using company ID column, which is the common field, because the transaction table has revenue data and it lacks information about which sector each company belongs to. So since we wanted to compute the revenue uh, at the sector level, so that's why we just performed the join here. And in the second step we applied the extract function on the month and filter, because we wanted to extract the month as well as we wanted to extract the year has to be 2020. So we just applied that here. So we just applied the function extract to compute the month and the year. And lastly, here we just grouped and aggregated the data. So after joining the tables and filtering the data, we just applied the group by clause on both month and sector column here at the last. So grouping by month ensures that revenue is calculated for each individual month, while grouping by sector allows us to focus on revenue at the sector level. And this was our requirement, since we wanted to compute the average revenue for the combination of month and sector. So that's why we just applied the group by clause on the month and sector. So once our data was grouped, we just applied the average function. So average function to compute the average revenue for each sector within each month. So this actually gives us the desired result for monthly average revenue per sector. And at last, if you want to do order by, you can do that. So order by on month and sector, that you can do. But let's discuss the another approach, which was using a CTE. So now to get my final output, I need to first create a CTE to extract the month, and then we will just filter it by the year 2020. So let's just write a CT to extract the month from the transaction date. So to extract the month from the transaction date, we will be using extract function on the transaction date column. So let's do that. So I'm just writing a CT. So I'm just giving my CT name as monthly, and whatever the columns that I want to retrieve, I'll just write it afterwards. So this is my transactions table. So since I want to extract, so if I just run this table, so this is my transactions table. So what I want from my transactions table here is, I want the month from the transaction date. So I will just write the extract month from transaction date. So what this will do is, it will actually extract the month from the transaction date. So I'm just giving it alias as month. Now the second thing that I want is the company ID as it is. So if I just run this query, what I'll be getting is, so this is my month and this is my company ID. And for this combination of month and company ID, I want to compute the average revenue. So let's compute the average revenue. So to do that, to calculate the average revenue, so we can just apply the average function with a window function to compute the average monthly revenue for each company. So I'm just applying the average of revenue over partition by. So it should be partitioned by month. So it should be partitioned by month and company ID, right? So to partition by month, I cannot just write month over here, because this is just an alias that I just defined. So I'll have to write it completely, the extract month from transaction date as month, and should be partitioned by company ID as well. So based on this combination of the month and company ID, it will just calculate the average revenue. Here I have to close this parenthesis. Fine. So we don't want to write this as month. Okay. I hope it's clear. Yeah, fine. So now as I computed this, so if I just run this query, you can see that we have got the results, but let's just give it as some alias because it's too long here. So this is your average revenue. Now if I just run this, you will see that this is your average revenue. Also, one condition that you have to apply by default, it is already the year 2020 in the input tables. But if in case you're working on a long data set which has too many rows, so in that case, that there might be different years. So here we will have to apply the filtering condition. So where your year from the transaction date should be 2020. So here I will just extract year from transaction date column. So this year should be 2020 since this is already given in my question. And I'll just close my CTE here. So this is the CTE that I just wrote. Now from this CTE, I have to join it with the sectors table since I want to compute the sector, month, and the average revenue in my output. So I'll just join it on the company ID. So let's just join this. So here I'm just writing select statement from monthly, the above CTE, monthly as M, and I will just join it. So I'm just going to perform inner join here. So sectors as S, and I'll just do it on my company ID. So on M dot company ID is equal to S dot company ID. And the column that I want to retrieve, so I can just write M dot month because I want to retrieve month from my monthly table, and S dot sector that I want to retrieve sector from my sector table, and the average revenue. So the average revenue I want to retrieve M dot average revenue. So here M dot average revenue. So it's going to be the same average revenue. Fine. Now if I just run this query, complete query, let's just run this and see that we have got our expected output, although we have not performed the group by function. So here we have to apply the group by function. So here as you can see that we have computed the month, sector, and the average revenue, but as you can see that we have to calculate the average revenue corresponding to each month, sector, and the respective average revenue. But in this case, as you can see, for the month of February, technology sector, so you can see two columns over here. So here month 2 technology, again month 2 technology. So in this case you have to compute the average. This is not the actual average, so this is just the revenue. So let's compute the actual average here after grouping the data. So let's perform the group by. So we'll be applying group by function on the month and sector. So month comma sector. So month is from my M dot month and sector is from my S dot sector. And after applying this group by function, I'll just compute the average of this. So average of this revenue is going to be my final average revenue. Now if I just run this query, it should get my expected output. So as you can see that it has computed the average revenue now. So this was my expected final output. So I hope you're clear with the solution. If you want to, if you let's just go through the summary of the approach again. So first of all, we have just created a CT that extracts the relevant month and filters data to only include in the year 2020. It also calculates the average revenue per company for each month, but not specifically for the sector. So it has just computed the average revenue per company for each month. And in the second step, we just joined between the CT and the sectors table to analyze revenue at the sector level. And in the third case, we just grouped by month and sector to compute the final average revenue for each sector per month, for each sector per month. So here in this case, the sector is included since we wanted to compute the final average value for the combination of sector and month. So in this case, we had to apply the group by on the month and sector, and then we computed the final average value over here. So guys, I hope that you are clear with both the solutions. So if you think there is another different approach to solve this problem, please let me know in the comment section. Also, thank you for watching the video and please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.